So thank you all for joining us. As Dee said, it's a delight to have you all with us tonight to run through how to use the Electronic National Vendor Declaration product. So first of all, I will just run through some general information around integrity systems. Then we'll have a look at the integrity system itself and the programs that make up the integrity system. And then we'll take a bit of a deeper dive into eNVD. And as Deanna suggested, I'm going to run through a live demonstration for you tonight, so you can, I suppose, hear it from the horse's mouth as to how you can make eNVD work for you and ensure that you're filling out your consignment documentation in the easiest, fastest possible way. So we'll start tonight with just a general overview of ISC, so that is Integrity Systems Company. We are a subsidiary of Meat and Livestock Australia, which is a service provider to the red meat industry. And as you can see on your screen, we provide the industry services under the guidance and direction of the policy and strategy advocates above us. You'll see there's quite a number of them that MLA services. And essentially, we all have separate roles, but we all work together to support the industry and provide solutions for you and products and services like the eNVD system. So, about MLA, so as I said, we're a subsidiary of Meat and Livestock Australia, and Meat and Livestock Australia provides research, development and adoption to the red meat industry here in Australia. They also provide marketing. And I guess the core role of MLA is to collaborate with industry and government. And essentially our remit is to provide the three things you can see on your screen. So invest in initiatives that contribute to producer profitability, sustainability and global competitiveness. So if we then have a look at Integrity Systems Company, we manage and deliver the red meat integrity system. The integrity system underpins our consumer confidence on farm and to all of our consumers around the world. Obviously, it ensures that the red meat product that you all produce is safe and we can trace that product when required. Collectively, the two systems that make up the integrity system, that is LPA and NLAS that you can see on your screen, they underpin our livestock selling system and give confidence to buyers, retailers and consumers. So I'll continue and put this in context for you. So we just talked about the integrity system, and I guess what I want to run through here is why that is important to you. So the red meat industry is a $28 billion industry. It employs 400,000 people across Australia and internationally, and it provides or delivers product into over 100 global markets. Ours is a very large and important industry, and there are thousands of people that depend on it across the globe for their food security and protein requirements. That's here in Australia and around the world. The confidence that consumers have in our product is based on the traceability that we do have through our supply chain, which means that we're accountable for where the product is raised, right back to the farm. The production is assessed to a standard in Australia, and as a first world country, I guess we can take for granted our food is produced safely and ethically, but this is not the case in every country. So when we're selling our product to international markets, which the majority of our Australian red meat goes into, we need to be transparent and have rigorous production systems in place that are required to be audited to make sure that we can guarantee the claims that we're making. And these claims that we do make, and particularly in the export sense, are particularly important to our international buyers. So they require these systems to be in place to continue to purchase and provide to consumers Australian red meat. And there's just a few examples on your screen there of kind of the importance and relevance of our integrity system in relation to being responsive to disease and being able to maintain our safe, clean and green standards that we have. We realised that we have varying levels of experience on the webinar, so we just wanted to take a little bit of a deeper dive into the two systems that make up the integrity system, and they are on-farm assurance and identification and traceability systems, so LPA and NLIS. Together, these systems provide a complete picture of traceability and food security. LPA on the left of your screen there, it is the livestock production assurance system. It's all about on-farm assurance, the management and well-being of your animals, and ensuring food safety, biosecurity and welfare on your farm. It's a tick of assurance that the product that you're selling meets our consumers' needs, and it demonstrates our professionalism as an industry and really underpins what we do as producers in this country. NLIS on the right side of your screen is all about identification and traceability. So it tracks the location of animals in our supply chain throughout their lifetime. It's a mandatory system for producers and endorsed by all of our major industry bodies. It's underpinned by state and territory legislation in Australia, which ensures that we all have the ability to track livestock in the event of a disease or any food safety incidents that we all need to be responsive to. The central component of these two programs is the Property Identification Code, or as you might be more familiar with, the PIC. The PIC is required for registration for both of these systems that underpin the integrity system. And PICs are managed and given by the state and territory departments of agriculture. They are incorporated into LPA and NLIS, and it's the only way that traceability and food safety can be managed at a national level. So ensuring that we have that standard for everyone is a key part of what we have developed and deliver for you. For an industry that exports a high proportion of its product overseas, it's very important that we have such a strong and effective national system. When animals are being transferred between PICs, that's really where LPA and NLIS come together. So it's based around the livestock movement, and that is the LPA National Vendor Declaration, or NVDs, as you can see on your screen. The eNVD, the LPA system, rather, what does that mean for a producer? So as I just mentioned, the LPA NVDs are the intersection between LPA and NLIS. They bring together all on-farm assurance, identification and traceability details into a declaration that all producers make across Australia, or rather all LPA accredited producers. The LPA NVD captures food safety information, as I mentioned. It's relevant to all the animals that are in that consignment, and it represents the movement and trade of livestock throughout the supply chain. The NVDs are a declaration. That means that they do provide evidence of the history and on-farm practices of the animals that you are selling or moving at that point in time. So the eNVD system, and you would have noticed that I was pretty keen to start talking about this. This is where I'll become quite fluent. The eNVD system is a mobile-friendly, user-centric web application that we have built and designed for producers, feedlots and all value chain stakeholders to use. As you can see on your screen, but I'd like to reiterate, it is always using the latest versions of forms. So we keep everything up to date, make sure that you're completely compliant and you never have to worry about that. It reduces any duplication and administration, extra administration that you might need to do completing forms. It is a central location, so it is it's very good for keeping all of your records in one place, because it's not going to disappear, it's not going to fly out the window, and it's certainly not going to get hit by any mud that you might have to reproduce during an audit. So it's very safe and easy for you to use. It's always available, so even in emergencies you can always get an eNVD, and it's accessible 24/7. And it's the most important part is that it's continuously improved. So based on the information that we get from you guys, we are constantly improving this system and trying to make it better for you to use and for you to have a better experience. So some of the benefits of using the system. So in comparison to the hard copy forms, which you may be more familiar with, using eNVD only means that you have to answer questions once. So for example, majority of livestock consignment forms have a significant proportion of the questions that are the same across the forms. Using eNVD, you'll only have to answer that once, and we'll automatically populate those answers across various forms that you select. You can use templates. So templates will save the information about your consignment, and I'll go into further details about that later, but essentially that can save you a lot of time and effort in entering all the information if you're doing frequent consignments. They can be printed out at any time, so we've built in a lot of flexibility for this system, making sure that it is usable and friendly for you guys, and you can use it to whatever level of comfort that you have. And it can be used on a mobile device, so it's mobile friendly. It is a responsive web application. Finally, it's easy to read, understand, and as I mentioned, doesn't get lost, doesn't fly out the window. And finally, I'm sure that you'll all be happy to know that using eNVD gives you a $30 discount now on your LPA accreditation or re-accreditation. I'm assuming that you can all see my screen now, and I just wanted to land on what you will first do to access eNVD. So this page is the welcome page to MyMLA, which is the main way that you'll be able to access LPA and then eNVD. I won't take you through the actual login section, but what I will do is if you enter a direct eNVD link, so like that, you will be taken to the LPA login page. So this is the other page that you might see to access eNVD. Both pages will land you into the LPA homepage. As you can see on your screen here, we've got a bunch of information about your LPA accreditation, and then we've also got some options at the top. Okay, you should be able to follow my cursor now with the little red dot on your screen, and I'm sorry, I'm going to look over to the screen that I have in front of me, but I hope that you're concentrating on the screen and hopefully not me by now. So please follow along. So at the top of your LPA home screen, you've got a couple of options. One of them in the middle is eNVD. If you select that option, that will take you through to the eNVD web application, which is what you can see on your screen here now. Okay, so this screen is the home page for the eNVD application. It's called your consignments list screen. And there's a couple of things that I want to direct you to on this screen. First of all, you'll land in here, and if you have previously used eNVD, you'll see that there are some eNVDs here. If you haven't previously used eNVD, there won't be any consignments listed there, but it will just have a message encouraging you to start your first consignment. You'll notice up the top here that I'm on the consignments tab of this page, and you'll also notice that there's a few other tabs across the top here. If you've previously used any historical systems of ours, namely the eDEC system, you'll be able to find those historical consignments under that section there. And of course, if you do have any trouble or you want to go back to LPA, you can access help and return to the LPA Service Centre from the top. Over on the right-hand side, you should have your login information here, and this tells you what account you're logged into. Over on the right-hand side of the screen, so about the middle, we've got a feedback tab here. And as I mentioned, we're constantly monitoring feedback and improving the system based on the information that you give us about your experience. So please tell us about what you're liking and what you're not liking. You can access that feedback button at any point while you're using eNVD, so it doesn't just belong to that screen. Another thing I'll draw your attention to is this little icon down the bottom here, this little megaphone. In here, it tells you what we've released with eNVD, so you can access information here about what's coming or what's new, and then you can have a look at different articles, and we'll particularly be putting information there about new features and things that we're delivering that should be improving your experience. Okay, so let's get started, and I'll just take you up to the top right-hand side of the screen, and this green button says create new consignment. Okay, so in this screen here, it's asking you whether you'd like to start from scratch or to use an existing template. And for the purposes of the demonstration, I'll just start from scratch. and then I'll demonstrate how to use a template after that. Okay, so the first screen that you'll enter when you start a new consignment is the movement information screen. And this information is representative of the left-hand side of a regular NVD, which in part A, which is where the livestock are coming from, which is predefined. So you should see your pick and your account information just here at the top of the screen. And then it's where they're going to, which is a bit further down. So in this particular case, I am going to keep this button up the top here ticked because I am also the owner of the livestock. But if, for example, I was in an adjustment situation, the livestock might be coming from my pick, but if they're owned by someone else, I'm able to search for that someone else if they are a producer themselves, or I can enter the details manually here. And you'll notice that it's optional to put a pick in for the owner, and that's consistent with our paper copy documents. If I don't want to do that, I can select cancel, and I can tick the box again that says that I am the owner of the livestock that are moving. If the details that are pre-populated in the consignment aren't correct, you have the option to edit them here. The only thing you can't edit is the pick that they come from, and that's consistent with the hard copy LPA NVD and the way that we print the pick on the consignment booklet for you. Again, you can fill in, you can change the information to suit what's happening in this consignment, and you would select save. In this instance, I'll select cancel because all the information's correct. Now comes the tricky part, and a lot of people, we have had a lot of feedback about this next step, and that is where are the livestock being transported to? So that is the destination. For the purposes of tonight, I'm going to search for my colleague George because we have a test account under his name. But let's just pretend Mr. G. Basher is an abattoir and I'm going from a producer property to an abattoir. So as you would have seen, I searched in the pick register and selected the most appropriate selection for me. If I decide that those details aren't correct, again, I can edit the details in here. So for example, we are missing an address. It's important to have an address. So we'll put in the one at the top of my list, save those details, and you'll see there that that address now is populated and it will populate in the final NVD. Alternatively, if I decide that's not where those livestock are going or I've made the wrong selection, I can select a different pick. You also will have had the option to originally put in the details manually. So if I'm not sure or I can't find the correct pick in the search, I can enter the details manually, just like I would write them into a document. So put in the name, put in the address, and all of those kinds of things. Again, for the purposes of tonight, I will find our George Basher abattoir again in the pick search. Now, if I'm consigning to an abattoir, but I know that I'm part of a certain quality assurance program, or if I know that a particular livestock buyer or agent is handling the consignment, I can untick this box and also enter the agent details. So if, for example, I know that the agent doesn't have their own pick, then I would use the enter details manually. So I might say agent A is going to look after this. You may or may not know their address. I'm going to keep them in New South Wales for the purposes of this consignment. And you may or may not know whether they have a pick or exactly what their postcode is, but fill in as much information as you can and then save that details. So what you're seeing on your screen here is that they're being transported to the abattoir, our Mr. G. Basher abattoir, but they're being consigned to the agent or the livestock buyer that would handle the transaction. And that's how it's going to come out on the paper copies of the eNVD if you choose to print. Okay, so then we'll select a date down the bottom here. And you don't have to select a time, but if you would like to, and particularly for the likes of the MSA vendor declaration, it's always good to pick a time. So we'll pick a time after now, so this evening at 10 p.m. And I would suggest that you always just have a bit of a scroll back up, particularly my screen that you're seeing here tonight is quite big, but obviously yours might be quite small. So just make sure that you're scrolling back up and checking the information that you've entered at each step. And I'm going to select next. The next screen is to select the species, and it's something that we would like to be able to pre-fill based on your profile information, but for now we're going to stick with asking you what you would like to do, and particularly for those producers that have joined us tonight that are multi-species. For the purposes of this evening, I'm going to stick with cattle because the majority of the people who are registered and online with us tonight are cattle producers. So this account that I'm logged into, it has MSA accreditation, it has National Feedlot Scheme accreditation scheme, and it also has the option to have health declarations. It is also registered with the EU. So I'm currently seeing the full gamut of things that I can select for this consignment. For the purposes of tonight, I'll just select a few. So I'm going to select a regular NVD, and then I'm going to select an MSA form. And we'll go with those two forms tonight. But obviously, if you wanted to do a health declaration, or if you were an accredited feedlot, you can select as many of these forms as you need. And what this will do is make sure that the information that's across these four forms now, four forms, is consistent. So the next screen in front of you is what we call our wizard or stepper. And this is where you will start actually answering questions and filling in information about the livestock that are a part of this consignment. So this first screen is your livestock description. It replaces the table that you'll see on an NVD. If you select to add a livestock description, you'll be able to add information just as you would in the table on a regular hard copy documentation. Tonight I won't draw the brand, but you can draw the brand if you would like to. So this option enables you to draw a brand or a signature or whatever you might like to use. Or you can describe it like you usually would in a table. I'm going to just describe it for the purposes of tonight. I'm also going to say that the livestock that I'm adding have NLIS tags and not rumen devices. And then at the bottom of this pop-out screen, I just select add. Now what's happened here is that I've essentially added one line, so one sector of my livestock as part of a description. I can change, if I've made a mistake, I can remove it. I can also update those details with the change button at that point in time. And you'll notice down here that my total head count is 10 and my total number of electronic tags is 10 as well. If then I want to have another line or another group of livestock, again, I can add a different group by selecting the add button. These might be steers this time. And again, I won't draw the brand. And I will say that they all have NLIS tags. So here you can see part 1 and part 2, which are representative of two different lines that we're used to seeing on the table. Again, you have the flexibility to change and remove. And at the bottom, you'll see that my total head count has increased to 25, and so has my total electronic ear count. And that should round out your livestock description section. So you will then select next.
So just before we get into the history section there, you've run us through the movement, forms and livestock sections. I'm just conscious, we're working through a cattle example, but we do have some people that are sheep only and goat only online tonight. Is there any differences in what you've stepped us through so far in terms of what a sheep or a goat example might include?
Yeah, absolutely. So for example, on sheep and lamb or goat consignments, you would have seen different sex options. You would have had the ability to add mixed sex instead of selecting bull, steer or heifer. So we tailor the responses to the species that you have previously selected, but there would be no change to the experience. So the screens will still look the same. The way that we ask the questions will still be the same.
Excellent, great. Just thought we'd clarify that for our non-cattle people online. We're getting some great questions coming through, so I'm going to let the ISC team continue working our way through those while you run us through the rest of the sections.
Thanks, Dee. Okay, so as you can see on your screen, now we're up to a different section of the consignment. We are at the history section, And these sections here are now a combination of all of the different questions that would be history related from all of the forms that you've selected to enter. So what I mean by that is this question at the top here is a regular question from the LPA NVD, and I will answer it as such. So I'll go no, and I've owned them for 2 to 6 months. However, this question, are all the animals in this lot milk-fed dealers? This comes from the MSA vendor declaration. So as you can see, we've combined the questions, so you only have to answer them once, and so that they're logically arranged into these sections at the top. If you're wondering where these particular questions come from, you can always select the help button over to the right-hand side against each question, and that'll give you an indication of which form these questions are related to if you can't tell otherwise. Okay, so I've moved now on to the food safety section. Again, we've combined the questions in this section. So some of them you'll recognise from the NVD, some of them you may recognise from other forms. And this is particularly important when we combine a health declaration. There tends to be a lot more questions in the history and chemical and treatment section. So I'll go through now and answer the questions as if I was doing the consignment. And you'll recognise these questions, as I mentioned, from a regular LPA NVD. When I've answered all of the questions in each section, you'll see that there's a green tick at the top, which means that we've saved that information about this consignment. Okay, so once I've filled out all of my questions, I'm then taken to the declaration section. And the declaration should be pre-filled with the information that's come from your account. So you will be given a full name, an address that's registered, and then in the middle of your screen here, you can choose to upload a signature file, or you can choose to sign the declaration. And for the purposes of tonight, I'll show you how to sign. So if you hit that sign declaration, there's a piece in the middle here that comes up that says signature. In this box that's outlined, you can do your signature using the mouse. Obviously, if you're on a mobile device, you can use your finger. The box should cater for fat fingers, so you shouldn't have any trouble there. The date will automatically populate as today's date, because that is the date that you've just selected to sign. But if you are doing a declaration for the future, and we can make them for up to 28 days in advance in eNVD, you can predate or backdate as required. Consistent with hard copies, we do require a phone number. No screenshotting would be appreciated. So I'll just enter in a legitimate email here so that our system works. And then you'll be ticking that you do declare that you have read and understood and agree to the terms that are below. And we will list the terms for each of the declarations that you have said that you wanted to be a part of the consignment. So in my example here, I've got NVD and MSA, and you will see the declaration text there. By ticking that, you are declaring those particular terms. Because I've got an MSA deck in my consignment, I'm required to put an MSA registration number. And if the MSA registration number of the owner is different, you also have the ability to enter it here. Finally, you can add any additional documentation if you're part of a proprietary program or want to attach anything else as evidence or as part of your declaration. And there is the additional information section down the bottom. Finally, you can hit next. And of course, live demonstration, there's always some sort of error. At this point, we'll go back to the consignment and I will show you how to work around this particular issue. And also I'll show you a bunch of other things that we can do with your consignment. So as you can see, the consignment's in draft mode, and that's okay for now. I'll run through the submit and print in a minute. What I'm going to do is show you what you can do with that consignment. If, for example, you realise something is wrong or you want to start again, but you want to have the same information that you previously had. So over here on the right-hand side of our consignments, we've got a couple of options to do with this consignment that I've just created. One of them is update, because it's still in draft mode. One that's duplicate, and one is create a template. And finally, we can delete that consignment if we want. So to begin with tonight, I'm going to show you that we can duplicate it. Now, it takes you back to the start of the consignment, but as you'll see that all the information is pre-filled in that consignment. So all it's a matter of doing is checking that you want the same information. So this speeds up the consignment significantly. You will have to make the declaration again. So you will have to sign because this is a new consignment. And you will have to enter in information again. Okay, so it's likely that some of the information I've put in, particularly around the test accounts, is creating that error, but we'll just ignore it for now. What I'll do is go back to the consignments. If I wanted to come in and I really wanted to use eNVD, so access NVDs, but I didn't want to go through all of the steps, I wanted to just access the hard copy, for example, I can create a new consignment, create from scratch. I can put in some basic details. About the consignment. So I'll do the same thing as what I did before. So now I'm going a little bit faster. You can see that I've got the same consignment details. And when I get to this page, all I can do is go up to the top, and I'm sorry, I do have to move my cursors and bits and pieces that I've got going on here, and submit and print. Now, what that's done is I haven't filled out any of the information, but I can choose to go back and update the consignment. I can also choose to print and access the forms. So what you'll now see on your screen is the NVD, and if I scroll down, the MSA vendor declaration. And as you can see, the information that I haven't filled out is left blank for you to fill out on the hard copy. Now you can choose, now I'm in Google Chrome, but obviously whatever browser you use, you will have the option to print. My option to print is over here at the top right of the screen, and I can also choose to download those forms. So if, for example, you have completed all of your information and your consignment is clear and it's correct and complete, you can download that copy of these PDFs and you can email that off to whomever you might like. So for example, we often find that that goes to agents. Or you can print the form and fill out the majority of the information on a hard copy. But remember that if you do print out the form, you will need to print multiple copies because you need to have one for yourself that's finished and complete, one for the transporter and one for the receiver, same as the triplicate copy that you get when you order a book. Okay, so going back to our consignments list. You'll now see that I've got one submitted, one draft. For the purposes, I will use this submitted consignment to demonstrate the other functionality that we have. Otherwise, I think we will run into our little friendly error again. So from here, my options have changed. I can now update the consignment. I can view those documents that we just viewed. I can duplicate the consignment, which I just demonstrated to you, or I can create a new template. So if I create a new template, I can add a name, something that I'll remember. So for example, if it's a particular type of livestock or if it's a particular place that you're sending them, you can create that template and it'll come up in your list of templates. And I'll get you to look at the top of the screen now, and we're now on the templates section of the web application. From here, it'll show you what species and what forms are included in the template and where it's from and to. You'll then be able to go and create a new consignment using the template, edit it or delete it. So if I go back to my original journey that I took you through where we created a new consignment, now you'll see that I have the option to use that test webinar template. And what that would do is save me putting in that information. So if I select that, you'll notice that all of the information in here again is pre-filled. I just have to make sure that it's correct, and then it'll take me straight through to the section where I left off. And again, I can submit and print, or I can leave this consignment and come back to it later in draft form. Okay, and finally, excuse me, If you decide that you don't need that consignment anymore, and for the purposes of auditing, you don't want that consignment there because it hasn't actually happened, or if you just make a mistake and you want to have another go, you can always delete the consignments. So it'll ask you whether you're sure, and then you can delete that draft or submitted consignment. Okay. That's a basic first run through. So that's our eNVD 101 that I've run through, and basic features of the eNVD. I'm sure you've had lots of questions throughout, but I'm hoping that we have answered a bunch of them on the journey.
Just to reinforce a couple of points there. So if people make a mistake when they are going through and putting in the information, how do they go about correcting things if they have made an error at some point?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways that they can do that. If they're in draft or submitted form, they can choose to update that consignment and they can go back and edit details. Otherwise, they can choose to delete and start again. And certainly if you've already printed, submitted and printed, and you've actually got the hard copy eNVDs, then you will just need to update them just like a regular hard copy. So that is, make sure that you have amended the correct section and then initial that change.
Excellent. Okay. And a lot of people asking, if they don't have access to a printer, or if they're, they don't have good internet, for example, what do they do in those situations?
Yeah, so if there is no internet, or you don't have a printer, or you wanting to set up the consignment and take it down to the yards. So the most common example of this that we have is that they'll sit at the office and they don't know the exact number of livestock until the livestock are loaded. And that's perfectly fine. So as I demonstrated, you can submit and print without filling out that information. So you can fill that information out by hand if you need to. So I would suggest that you do the consignment in eNVD in advance. So for example, if I was sending livestock tomorrow, I'd come in to the office tonight and do my eNVD. And what that does is give you plenty of time to make sure that you're getting things right, and that you can stuff around with the printer or the internet or whatever it might be. Print those documents off if you can, or if you know someone that can for you, and then take those documents to the yard with you. And I'll just mention that we obviously know that that is still relying on the paper version of the documents at this stage, and we've purposefully built in that flexibility so that people can still use the hard copy that they are used to. As we continue to evolve eNVD, we will be starting to introduce completely paperless options that are available in an offline situation. So that is, you'll be able to fill in this information without connectivity while you're at the yards.
Great. Well, I know you're going to get into some what's next for the eNVD content shortly. Just a couple of specific questions that have come in. We've got one from Paul. Do I need to print 3 copies of the NVD each time? So just to reinforce, what should people be doing again?
Yeah, so if you have filled out the complete consignment, so if it's complete and ready to go, it's got all the transporter details, everything's done online, which is uncommon at the moment because it is limited to internet and having access to a printer, then you can just print the 1 copy that's required to travel with the transporter, because you'll have the information on your login, and so will the receiver when they log into eNVD. But in majority of situations at the moment, you'll have information that you haven't completed. And so then therefore, when you print, you need to make sure that the copy that you keep for auditing purposes, the copy that the transporter has, and the copy that the receiver gets are all clear, correct, and complete. So you will need to print 3 copies if you're in that situation every time.
Great, thank you. And just another specific one from James. So if you're emailing the eNVD to an agent, how should we get a copy to the carrier?
So if the carrier is not wanting to receive the consignment details digitally, and again, majority of them won't. However, we do have examples in particular supply chains where the transporters are happy to get emailed copies, then I would suggest that you print a copy and take it with you to the yards for that transporter. And particularly if you don't know which driver that you're going to get, it's pretty important that they do have a copy that they can take with them. This is the super exciting part. I've kind of alluded to it a little bit throughout the presentation, but we do have a roadmap of things that's informed by the feedback and by a bunch of research that we have done. Essentially, what you're looking at on your screen, which might be quite small, it certainly is for me anyway, is that we have a bunch of deliverables to get to you in the next 12 months. And as you can see, the first part of that roadmap was to do a piece of user research, and we've done that, and we've used that landscape study, as we call it, which took a deep dive into the full supply chain and livestock movements, and I really understood what you guys need and want from us in the context of eNVD. We've used that to inform a bunch of activities and enhancements to the product. And that includes updating the way that we work with your on-farm systems. And so that's that second point there around integration. So that's the way that we integrate with your other systems to make sure that your process is seamless if you do have other on-farm systems, so we're not duplicating anything. We are working hard to improve the pick search. So we understand that this is a particular pain point for the majority of our users, and it is a challenge, particularly given the vast number of picks and the variations of names and users and all of the rest of the data that sits within our pick search, but we are working hard to improve that. So you will notice that searching for places gets easier. You might notice that we ask you for different things like, are you going to an abattoir or are you going to a sale yard, so that we can narrow down the results and really make that a much better experience for you. And then I would say the big kahuna, which is the offline capability. So for a long time now, we've known that eNVD is not really accessible to particularly producers that are out in the field or at the yards with no service. And so in our user research piece, which I briefly spoke about before, we took a really good look at how things work on the ground and what we can and can't do in service. And we have a bunch of concepts for solutions that we are going to start building now to deliver to you in a mobile application. So you'll be able to download that from the App Store or Google Play. And what that'll enable us to do is transfer consignment information without service. So that is when having things like access to a printer or having internet connectivity won't be an issue anymore. And that will be, sort of six or so months away. But we are really looking forward to being able to provide access to all producers, including those in really remote situations. Then another big ticket item. So once we have a majority of people, and particularly when we do have the offline community working on eNVD, the next obvious step is for us to integrate with NLAS. So part of the direction of eNVD and integrity systems in general is to make sure that we are providing the best experience, but we're also making it easier for you, and that we're not making it so confusing across our different systems and programs. And so when we get to this stage, what we'll be doing in eNVD is making sure that we do your NLAS transactions for you after your eNVD is complete. So you won't have to go on and do any NLAS transactions as a purchaser, and you'll certainly keep all of your traceability, assurance, and livestock movement records in one spot. As we move further down our roadmap, and we're talking sort of 12 months away now, we'll start to work with various supply chains. So that is from end to end, to try and increase adoption, but also try to add value for them. So once we have people in offline environments and we're automatically doing a bunch of transactions, it only makes sense for us to work with a bunch of proprietary supply chains to increase adoption and make sure that you're all getting the best experience you can, no matter where you're sending your livestock. And finally, we will then be able to have the flexibility to start looking at other raising claims. So if there is those of you out there that are part of proprietary systems or quality assurance programs, you might have another piece of documentation that you have to fill out when you send livestock. And we want to make sure that we can make all of your livestock movement documentation digital. So when we get to that point, we will be involving proprietary programs. So for example, you might think of teas grasslands as an example. Okay, so I've mentioned it quite a few times tonight, but I just want to reiterate that everything that we're doing is informed by you guys. So we are creating a continuous improvement environment whereby when you tell us that there's an issue, we're prioritizing that issue accordingly. We're developing solutions that meet your requirements, that solve the problems that you're bringing to us, and then we deliver that at a rapid pace. We've proven that this can happen over the last 12 months. So if you do have feedback, there's a number of avenues that you can provide it to us. I demonstrated one of them, which is when you're using eNVD, there's an ability to provide us feedback while you're using the application. The obvious other one for both feedback or support and just general guidance is our help desk. You can come directly to us using the email address on your screen there, or you can go and find out more information and context on the Integrity Systems website. And finally, there is a lot of information to consume, and we've gone through a lot tonight, and hopefully you've been able to follow along with me. But if not, we'll always have resources available to you, and we'll be contacting you through social and digital. So make sure that you keep abreast of all of our communications. That includes emails, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We've got a bunch of animations that can help you understand what we're doing with eNVD as well. So please go on and check it out. And again, if you need any help with that, please get in contact with us. And finally, a bit of a disclaimer at the end. It is a declaration. So eNVD and LPA, the hard copy, NVDs, the hard copy forms, are all a declaration, and we can't do it for you, but we are here to help. So we can most certainly guide, we can give you all of the resources that you need, but it is really your declaration to make sure that you are completing your consignments clearly, correctly, and completely. And that is really what underpins our entire integrity system. So we really hope that eNVD helps you do that. It makes it faster and easier. And if not, tell us why, and we'll make sure we improve it so that you can make your declaration better next time.
Great, thank you so much, Em. Such a great deep dive into a really important platform that producers can use. Now we have been, yes, the keyboards have been running hot. I'm sure some of the ISC team have got a bit of smoke coming out of their keyboards. Thank you for all your really great questions this evening. I am just going to make a last call for questions. We've sort of got a couple of minutes that if you do have anything burning that you want an answer to, time is running out. Now's your chance. Just want to draw your attention to the chat box as well. We've just put the evaluation survey in there. We would really, really, really love your feedback on this session. If you found it really useful, please tell us. If there's parts of it that you thought we could have explained better, then please tell us that as well. We really want to make sure that we're making these sessions as useful for you as we can. Now, a couple of other things to mention. So we do have some more webinars coming up in July. So on the 20th of July, same night, same time, we've got tips to be ready for this year's 2021 selling season. So if that is a topic that you're interested in, we would love you to join us on the 20th of July at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard. And also on July 27, we have an overview of the red meat integrity system. Now, this is particularly for anyone working with livestock, but your role might be as a farmhand or a farm manager or overseer, or you might be the office manager. We would love to engage with that group of people that are working with livestock and have a really important part to play in our red meat industry, so we can all stand by what we sell as a whole. So a couple of webinars to keep an eye out for. They're on the ISC website, but we will include links to those in the post-webinar email. Now, just while we're finishing up the last question in the Q&A, maybe just a question about, if you are feeling overwhelmed with all of this, and maybe you want to use eNVD, but you're not quite sure sort of how to start or where you might get into it. Maybe just a word for people that maybe aren't feeling quite so confident. how would ISC recommend that they could get involved?
Yeah, sure, Dee. And I think the first thing is to note that you're not alone. So a lot of people are doing this for the first time, and certainly we're concentrating on that first time experience, trying to make it as intuitive as we can from a system perspective. But if you need support, there's plenty of resources. You've got the help within eNVD, there's help on the Integrity website, which is probably where I'd start. The Integrity Systems website's got a great number of FAQs. You can sort of broadly get some context and then move progressively towards eNVD. And when you get in eNVD, I guess don't be in a stressful situation. So if you are a first-time user, make sure you're doing the consignment well in advance of when you're actually transporting the livestock. So if you've got a consignment coming up, maybe you'll go in 3 days before and just have a bit of a squiz, do a draft consignment, like give it a crack and then delete it. Just have a little practice run and make sure that you're okay with what is working. And look, by all means, if you need help throughout that journey, you can call us at the help desk, and we've got staff that are skilled and able to help you through a consignment. And if you have any more tricky questions, or you're just really not sure about something, again, email us, send us a feedback while you're in the system. So plenty of different mechanisms. There is help in the system as well. So we've got some demonstrations, we've got videos that run you through briefly what I've run through this evening. And obviously there is also this webinar recording. So plenty of resources for you to lean on when you're in that situation.
Great, thank you, Em. So hopefully, folks, you're getting the message that the ISC team is here to help. They realise that this is a new skill for you. So yeah, if you've got questions, you now know where to reach out, but hopefully you're feeling a bit more confident to give it a go. Yeah, I guess create some efficiencies there, and make life easier, less time in the office, ideally.